Imagine sitting on the grass at a summer festival. You're listening to live music, the sun is shining, and you're completely surrounded by families.
Just a feeling of total, absolute safety.
Exactly. You feel perfectly safe. It's a sanctuary. Until, in a fraction of a second, the music is violently drowned out by 10 rapid-fire gunshots ripping right through the crowd.
And the panic just instantly takes over.
Right. And as you scramble for cover, the person next to you casually tosses a handgun to the ground.
Which is just chilling.
It really is.
And-
And then they just melt into the screaming masses. Pause. Today, in this deep dive into the evidence, we are reconstructing a single terrifying afternoon in Toledo, Ohio.
And our mission here is to take a pretty massive stack of primary sources, right? We've got eyewitness accounts, news reports, and this comprehensive municipal public safety analysis.
Right. We want to examine exactly how an illusion of total safety can be shattered in a matter of seconds, leaving a community just grasping for answers.
Because what becomes impossible to ignore as we piece together this timeline are the hidden fractures beneath the surface. We aren't just looking at a timeline of bullets and panic.
No, we're looking at something much deeper.
We are looking at the systemic underlying patterns of a city, the structural vulnerabilities that turn a neighborhood celebration into a mass casualty event.
So, to understand the collapse, we first have to build the scene. It's June 6, 2026, Toledo, Ohio.
Right, for the 53rd annual Old West End Festival.
Yeah, and the focal point is a 2-day celebration at the Agnes Reynolds Jackson Arboretum. That's right at the intersection of Delaware and Glenwood Avenues. Let's paint the picture for you. It's a beautiful Saturday.
Perfect weather.
The air smells like bustling food vendors.
Yeah.
Live music is echoing through the canopy of the park. You have these historic Victorian home tours happening on the surrounding streets.
It's widely considered the unofficial peak-off to Toledo's summer festival season.
I mean, it is the absolute definition of community cohesion.
It is a moment of pure collective joy. But to truly grasp the weight of this afternoon, you have to look at the contrast. You have to compare that specific sort of walled-off moment of joy with the broader reality of the city surrounding it.
The reality of Toledo.
Right. Toledo, historically known as the Glass City, is a mid-sized municipality of about 270,000 residents. And right now, it is navigating incredibly complex, overlapping structural crises.
The public safety assessments in our source material really highlight this.
They do. Nearly a quarter of the city's population is living below the poverty line. That is more than double the national average.
And economic distress on that massive scale, it never exists in a vacuum. It acts as an accelerant for everything else.
It bleeds directly into the crime metrics. In the years leading up to this event, Toledo was struggling with a violent crime rate that, again, was more than double the national average.
The numbers from the pandemic were staggering.
Homicides spiked to a 50-year record high. They've been averaging around 60 fatal and over 270 non-fatal shootings annually ever since.
So when you look at the Old West End Festival through that specific lens, you realize this isn't just a party.
No, not at all.
For this community, this festival is a vital, cherished pressure valve, a desperately needed safe haven.
Right.
It's the illusion of a walled garden. You're surrounded by these beautiful, historic homes and laughing families, completely unaware of the threat that is quietly stepping into the frame. Pause. Because right around 5:30 p.m., that atmosphere completely fractures.
And the disruption begins entirely unremarkably.
Just a normal festival moment.
Exactly. Eyewitness Tito Aguilar is standing near the vendors waiting to order food. He notices a group of juveniles nearby. Words are exchanged. Posturing turns into pushing, and a physical altercation breaks out.
A standard fist fight.
Standard fist fight. Aguilar instinctively pulls out a cell phone to record the brawl.
And this is where the timeline violently accelerates. On that recording, over the noise of the crowd and the music, you suddenly hear loud pops.
The initial reaction of the crowd is a fascinating and, well, a terrifying psychological defense mechanism.
The brain trying to protect itself.
Yes. The human brain, when faced with sudden trauma in a presumed safe space, tries to rationalize the threat away. Attendees hear the pops and immediately assume it's just fireworks.
Their brains are telling them, it's a festival, there must be a fireworks display.
Exactly. But the rationalization only lasts a fraction of a second.
The horrific realization washes over the Arboretum. It is not fireworks. It is at least 10 rapid gunshots ripping directly through the densely crowded park.
Right through the families.
Yeah. We have the chilling account of Kevin Barry, a U.S. Navy veteran with extensive medical training. He's sitting on the grass with his friends. The moment those shots ring out, The denial doesn't even register for him.
His training instantly kicks in.
It does. He recognizes the sound of live fire, screams for everyone around him to hit the deck, and then he watches in absolute disbelief as a handgun is casually tossed to the ground less than 50 feet away from where he is taking cover.
He literally watches the weapon being discarded onto the grass as the panic fully sets in.
I want to pause on that specific moment because the psychology here is baffling. What happens to the collective mind of a crowd when the music abruptly stops, the screaming begins, and a fistfight turns into a shooting in the blink of an eye? Pause.
You are witnessing a terrifying sociological phenomenon known as rapid conflict escalation.
Break that down for us, based on the sources.
Well, the public safety analysis breaks down the mechanics of this. In an environment where a firearm is illegally carried into a crowded public space, the typical trajectory of an argument is completely short-circuited.
Because normally there's a cooling off period.
Right. Normally, a minor juvenile dispute, a fight over a perceived slight or a dirty look, has a cooling off period. There is time for de-escalation, for someone to pull the parties apart.
But the gun changes everything.
Completely. When a gun is introduced into that high-stress, highly audience-driven environment, the adolescent brain's fight-or-flight response is hijacked. The window between a punch being thrown and a trigger being pulled collapses to absolute zero.
The weapon removes the possibility of stepping back.
Precisely. We saw this exact same mechanism fail in Toledo a few years prior, on July 4th, 2021.
The Lawrence Avenue incident.
Yes. A neighborhood brawl at a Lawrence Avenue block party instantly escalated into a mass shooting. A 17-year-old boy was killed and 11 others were wounded, all because a minor physical conflict was instantly answered with lethal force.
And now history is repeating itself in the Arboretum.
Unfolding exactly the same way.
The immediate aftermath is a landscape of pure, unadulterated chaos. Festival goer Suzanne Brewer describes the scene in the sources. She witnesses intense, blinding panic as hundreds of families try to flee the open-air venue all at once.
It's just a horrific situation.
People are screaming, scrambling over lawn chairs, trampling over each other to escape the kill zone.
And that mass exodus creates a severe secondary crisis for the city, a catastrophic logistical bottleneck.
Toledo Fire Chief Allison Armstrong detailed this nightmare for the press. You have first responders, police cruisers, paramedics, fire engines, desperately trying to fight their way toward the victims.
But think about the geography of an arboretum in a historic neighborhood.
Right, they're navigating a maze of incredibly narrow Victorian-era residential streets.
Streets that were already barricaded and closed off for the festival.
Now, those same narrow streets are entirely gridlocked by a tidal wave of fleeing pedestrians and vehicles trying to escape the gunfire.
It creates a critical delay in emergency medical logistics. Urban planners note that densely populated historic neighborhoods are simply not architecturally equipped to handle a sudden mass evacuation panic.
There's just no room.
Exactly. The roads literally cannot accommodate the outgoing surge of terror and the incoming surge of heavy rescue vehicles simultaneously.
It's like trying to force a high-pressure fire hose backward through a cocktail straw. The infrastructure just buckles, buys.
It really does.
Meanwhile, inside the park, because the ambulances are trapped in the gridlock, heroes like Kevin Barry, the Navy veteran we mentioned, and the initial on-site police officers are forced to act as combat medics.
Out in the open.
Yeah, they are running across the grass, triaging victims where they fell. Barry personally spots at least 5 different people bleeding heavily from gunshot wounds.
And despite those severe environmental constraints, the emergency responders managed to execute an incredible feat of crisis management.
They really do.
They triage, stabilize, and transport every single patient to area hospitals within 1 hour of the initial shooting. But it's only after the sirens fade and the dust settles that the grim reality of the numbers begins to surface.
12 people shot.
12.
12 human beings, ranging in age from a 14-year-old child to a 61-year-old adult.
Oh.
2 of the victims arrive at the hospital in critical condition.
Miraculously, medical updates from the trauma centers confirmed that by the following day, all 12 victims had stabilized.
Which is astounding given the chaos.
It is. There were no immediate fatalities, but we have to look past the physical survival rate because the toll of an event like this extends far beyond the emergency room.
Like the cultural impact.
Organizers are forced to immediately cancel the remainder of the historic 53-year-old festival, robbing the neighborhood of its identity and its economy for the weekend.
And that leads us to the hidden systemic toll, the invisible anchor that a mass shooting drops on a city's foundation.
The financial burden alone is staggering. The public safety analysis, commissioned by the City of Toledo and conducted by the National Institute for Criminal Justice Reform, gives us the actual mechanics of this burden.
What are the numbers there?
A single fatal shooting incident cost the municipality approaching $900,000.
Wait, really? Almost $1 million for one single incident? How does that math actually work? Where is that money going?
It drains out through a dozen different municipal arteries. You have the immediate emergency response deployment. Then you have the intense hospital trauma care, which, for a single gunshot wound, can easily exceed $140,000.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, you have hundreds of hours of investigative police overtime, crime scene cleanup, legal proceedings, and victim compensation funds. Even non-fatal shootings incur hundreds of thousands of dollars in municipal costs.
So when you multiply that,
Right. When you have an event with 12 victims, the fiscal impact on the city's budget is catastrophic.
because that money has to come from somewhere.
Yes, it creates a doom loop. The millions of dollars spent managing the blood on the grass are millions of dollars drained away from community centers, after-school programs, and economic development.
The very things that keep a city safe.
Exactly. The city is forced to pay for the aftermath of violence by sacrificing the very programs designed to prevent it.
So you have a shattered community, a canceled neighborhood tradition, 12 people recovering in hospital beds, and a massive hole blown into the municipal budget. The immediate, screaming question from the public is, who did this?
Which brings us to the initial police briefing.
And this is where the investigation takes a truly dark turn.
It is.
Let's actually listen to how Deputy Chief Joseph Heffernan explained this terrifying reality to the press. We played this audio clip insertion earlier in our review of the sources.
It's the Toledo police update on the festival shooting.
Right. And hearing him say it out loud, the idea that based on the ballistic evidence, police believe there were at least two shooters. And they were likely firing directly at each other, right through the dense crowd.
They turned a packed community festival, a place filled with toddlers and grandparents, into a literal crossfire zone to settle a spontaneous dispute.
But the most unsettling part of Deputy Chief Heffernan's briefing is what he doesn't have.
The suspects.
Right. The shooters simply vanished. They melted into the panicked masses. They left no trace. There's no immediate known motive. And as of the reporting in our sources, there are no suspects in custody.
Which forces us to look at the mechanics of the investigation itself. Why does a case like this hit a brick wall?
Wait, I need to stop you there and push back on this. Because the logistics make no sense to me.
Correct.
You have hundreds of eyewitnesses in broad daylight. Cell phones are everywhere. Aguilar was literally recording the start of the physical fight. You're telling me no one, not a single parent whose child was just shot at, was able to point out the shooters.
It sounds impossible.
How do multiple gunmen evaporate like ghosts? Pause. How does the community begin to heal when the people who shot up their park are still walking among them?
I mean, to understand why those cell phone videos aren't being handed over to the detectives, you have to look at the deep systemic community police trust deficit in Toledo.
A trust deficit.
Yeah. When law enforcement repeatedly alienates a neighborhood, the willingness of that community to cooperate during a major crisis declines sharply. It's a sociological law of gravity. And Toledo has a very recent, very raw history of fractured trust.
Right. The public safety analysis points directly to a flashpoint incident that occurred just weeks before the festival on May 20, 2026.
Yes. 2 Toledo police officers stopped a group of black teenagers in the 2000 block of Sylvan Avenue for jaywalking.
Just for jaywalking.
The encounter was recorded on police body cam, and it quickly escalated verbally. The officers began taunting and insulting the teenagers, telling them to, and I quote from the footage, enjoy poverty.
Enjoy poverty. They said that to kids living in a city where the poverty rate is double the national average.
The footage went viral at the end of May. It sparked massive, immediate community outrage. The mayor had to publicly condemn it as the worst video of policing he had witnessed during his administration.
And the police chief agreed, right?
Yeah, he admitted it blatantly violated departmental standards. But this wasn't an isolated grievance. Just 1 month prior, in April, there were public protests after a 15-year-old girl was slammed to the ground by officers during a neighborhood stop.
It just builds and builds.
The friction was so intense that just 2 days before the festival shooting, the city council held a special meeting to try and establish stricter, enforceable guidelines for how officers interact with the public.
It's like trying to put out a massive fire in a building where someone has intentionally severed the water lines. The police are the firefighters, but the community holds the water.
That's a great analogy.
And right now, neither side trusts the other enough to connect the hose.
That is a perfect encapsulation of the paralysis. The systemic alienation results in a total lack of witness cooperation. The police are publicly begging for that cell phone footage from the Arboretum, but people are hesitant to come forward to an institution they feel disdains them.
And this isn't the first time they've hit this wall.
No. The police chief noted the exact same phenomenon during the 2021 block party shooting. He explicitly stated that a lack of witness cooperation completely hindered their ability to find the killers of that 17-year-old boy.
But to be fair to the scope of our sources, the analysis also points out that the friction goes both ways.
It absolutely does.
The Toledo Police Department is operating in an environment of acute, unrelenting physical danger, which breeds a defensive, hyper-vigilant posture.
They are policing a city with an incredibly high rate of daily gun violence, and the department has suffered profound traumatic losses. We have to look at their recent history.
Like the tragedy in 2020.
Yes. On July 4, 2020, 26-year-old Officer Anthony Daya was shot in the chest and killed while conducting a simple, routine welfare check on an intoxicated man in a Home Depot parking lot. The suspect simply turned around, pulled a gun, and fired.
And just 6 months after that, in January 2021, 24-year-old Officer Brandon Stalker was shot in the head and killed during a standoff with an arson suspect who emerged from a house firing 2 handguns.
These tragedies underscore the violent, unpredictable reality officers navigate on every single shift. But that hypervigilance, when combined with incidents of aggressive or derogatory policing toward the community, creates a devastating self-fulfilling cycle.
The community feels targeted and degraded, and the police feel under siege and unappreciated.
The trust evaporates entirely. So when a mass shooting happens in broad daylight, the shooters are able to casually walk away because the bridge between the terrified witnesses and the investigators has already been burned to the ground,
Leaving dangerous shooters on the street. And this brings us to the ultimate terrifying realization about the threat landscape of the city as a whole. Because this isn't just about one isolated afternoon in June.
No. To understand what happens when trust is broken, look at what happens when it actually works. The sources detail a stark contrast from 2018.
The thwarted plot.
Exactly. Toledo faced a threat that would have dwarfed the horror of the Old West End Festival shooting. The FBI and Toledo police thwarted a massive coordinated domestic terror plot by 2 Toledo residents, Elizabeth Lacron and Vincent Armstrong.
This detail in the report is just chilling. They were active in an online true crime community, idolizing previous mass shooters.
They were deeply embedded in that dark subculture. They had amassed an arsenal, an AK-47, shotguns, handguns, and all the raw ingredients for pipe bombs.
And they had a specific target in mind.
They had scouted and finalized a specific plan, which they referred to in their journals as D-Day, to execute a mass casualty attack on a crowded bar in downtown Toledo.
Lacron even purchased a specific pair of combat boots for the attack, noting she bought them so she wouldn't slip on the blood of the victims.
It is terrifying. But D-Day never happened, and the mechanism of why it didn't happen is the entire point.
The trust.
Yes. The only reason that massacre didn't occur is because a citizen trusted law enforcement enough to step forward and alert the police to the radicalization. When trust exists, massacres are prevented before the first shot is fired.
But at the Old West End Festival,
That trust was gone, and the shooters walked right out the front gate.
the sources offer municipal recommendations, of course, expanding community violence interventions, rebuilding trust through strict accountability.
Enhancing spatial security and urban evacuation planning so that ambulances aren't trapped in a maze of panicked pedestrians.
But policy takes years to implement, and the reality on the ground is immediate.
The reality is that unchecked community violence, fueled by a lack of trust and a surplus of firearms, poses an existential threat to the civic and cultural life of mid-sized American cities. Regional leaders across Ohio are echoing the same grave concern. Violence is actively eroding the public spaces we rely on.
Which leaves us with a chilling concept to ponder as we close this deep dive. The Agnes Reynolds Jackson Arboretum was supposed to be a sanctuary, a walled garden.
Right.
But if a beloved 53-year-old neighborhood tradition surrounded by historic homes and lasting families is no longer safe from the crossfire of an impulsive split-second dispute, well, what is the future of our shared spaces? Pause.
The walls of the garden were only ever an illusion, and that illusion is gone.
Think about that the next time you walk into a summer festival, the next time you hear the live music echoing through the trees, and you smell the food from the vendors, and you are surrounded by hundreds of people. Will you be watching the stage? Or will you be searching for the nearest exit? Pause. We will continue to follow the evidence as Toledo searches for answers. Until the next deep dive.